Dear Africa, your stories are found around fires, over meals and handshakes, in street corners and corner shops, in buses and backyards, in living rooms and classrooms. The tourist is not the only lens we use to see you. We use our neighbors' eyes and our forefathers' tongues to look at you. You are recipes passed down generations and generations. You are centuries of traditions and legacies. You are libraries and art centers. You are ululations at weddings and multilingual hymns at funerals. You are complex and beautiful. You have many narratives. You are a fabric with many borders that ask us where we come from and where we are going. We come from here and there and then and now. We use the pages of your histories to map our own futures. We use your stories to see ourselves and each other. Dear Africa, our love for you unites us.
Welcome all. It's wonderful to have you all here. I'm delighted to be here, to hold the space, to learn from, get inspired by, and celebrate African women, innovators for social change, leaders in their diaspora communities, mothers, sisters, role models for many. During this hour together, we will hear from powerful women who will generously share their personal stories and insights about being women, African, and leading important social change through the diaspora work. We will use the time to uncover the different roles and identities they've played throughout their life, with the challenges and opportunities in their path, and also hear about the role they see is possible for African diaspora communities in co-leading in an increasingly changing world. We welcome Grace Obado, Associate Professor of International Relations and Sustainable Development at IE University and IE Business School, and Angelou Eseilo, Ashoka Fellow for funding Green Youth Foundation, and she's also our current Ashoka Africa Director for Empathy. Together, we will be in a dialogue for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we will open to participants' questions for comments and any sharing that may emerge out of this dialogue. We will later close with a little self-reflection for all. So without any further ado, let's dive in this conversation. I welcome you, Grace and Angelou. Thanks for being here. And I really would like to start asking you to please share with us, looking at your life and where you are at this moment, who would you say you are now? And what identities are you embodying at the moment? And I'm gonna ask you, Grace, to start, and then we'll move into Angelou.
Thank you very much, Luzette, for that kind generation. I would also like to thank Ashoka and WISE for organizing this forum and for having me. So who is Grace Obado at this particular point in time? I am a college professor. I am a community leader. I lead a diaspora organization, which is a part of a bigger organization that is called Africa 2.0. So Africa 2.0 is an international foundation that has chapters in Africa and in the diaspora. And I'm the president of that diaspora organization in Spain. So one of the questions you have asked, which I really need to think about, is how many identities do I embody? And I think right now, one of them which I am proud of and I embody is I am an African woman. I am a mother. I'm a doctor. I am a daughter, I am a sister, and I am also a leader. But one of the things I've learned over time is that these identities are not static, they're dynamic. And they are also, a part of them are subjective in many ways as they are socially constructed. So just to give you an example, I was born and raised in Kenya. And when I came to Spain to pursue my first degree, and then I pursued others after that. But when I landed in Spain as a young girl, I would be asked, where are you from? And I would proudly respond that I was Kenyan. And soon I realized that no one cared about that. That all people cared about was to call me African. And I wondered why I was being attributed this new, which to me was new, because in Kenya, what was important was our ethnic groups and being Kenyan. And now I was acquiring this new identity. And I wondered, there are 54 or 55 countries in Africa. How could I, an 18-year-old girl, embrace that? And I came to later on, I love that identity and embrace it. And now one of the ways of defining myself is, as an African woman. I mean, one cannot blame Spanish people, Western people, because that's what the Western media has been good at, putting all African countries in one basket. And so my identity is constructed by myself, but also it's shaped by the societies I live in. So whether I am in Africa or whether I am in Spain, that's an important part. So the lesson I've learned from that is that having strong roots matter. And it's very easy to add on these layers and to embrace them as long as one is strongly rooted. So that is easy to do in a way that it doesn't compromise one's sense of belonging if one is rooted. So that's the grace in Grace Obado in 2022.
I love it.
Thank you. Angelou, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Grace. And I also would like to thank you, Zed, as well as Ashoka Africa and the Get Wiser Summit team, just for understanding the importance of this conversation, and the Diaspora Network, I see everyone, because this is such a critically important conversation. And I think much like that Dear Africa poem that you used to open up this session, which gives me chills every single time I hear it, identity is so complex. It's so complex, just as Grace was saying. So who is Angelou? I see myself as African-American woman, African woman, Nigerian woman. I'm a wife. I'm a mother, so I'm a nurturer. I am a fellow. I'm a change maker. I'm a system disruptor. I'm a global citizen. But I do think that, as Grace said, it really has been this organic, complex, transient type identity that I find myself often, kind of grappling with, because I'm now based in Lagos, Nigeria, with Ashoka Africa as their VP of Empathy. And I have never, ever considered myself as just called an American. Let's put it that way. I've been Black, I've been African-American woman, but when I come here in Nigeria and Lagos, it's the American. And when I first came here, I was kind of like, wait, are you talking about me? I am, so it's just, we can go much deeper, but yes, I think it's really important to understand the context, of understanding your identity and at what phase in your life, and then receiving that and surrendering to it. So yes, many, many hats and identities.
Wow, these stories are so rich and wonderful to learn more of. I'm curious, you spoke about context, Angelou, and complexity, and Grace, you also said something beautiful. Identity is constructed by myself and shaped by my environments. And so in all these environments and context and complexity, how is it that your journey has unfolded in a way that led you to engage with social change? What has inspired you to get engaged with that? And Angelou, I'm going to start with you on this time.
Okay. I like to say that I was raised and educated to serve. So my family, often I grew up, I could say it's by example that I saw my mother and my grandmother, all these people around me, always identifying solution or issues and then coming up with solutions for it. So as my siblings and we were always a part of, their innovation as it related to it solving some problem in the community, in the neighborhood. For just a quick example, my parents had a record shop in Jersey City, New Jersey, and it was called the Magic Inn. And it was like this place where Black people in the 60s would come to for, just to have fellowship and build relationships, and just a safe place for them, as you can imagine, during that era. And it was very critical for them for some reason, to see that we needed a place, that Black people needed a place to gather. My grandmother, at the church, she was the woman at the church that was always helping others in need. So, and then I went off to Spelman College, which is a historically Black college in Atlanta, which the motto is for us to make a decision to change the world, and that we are actually educated with service in mind. So I think from my upbringing as well as my education, the focus it's always been kind of embedded in me. It's quite innate now, the importance of social impact and using the assets, the resources, the skills that you've acquired to help others and to change systems that we know are broken.
Wonderful. Grace, over to you.
Uh-oh. We can't hear you, Grace.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my inspiration for social impact comes from I think two sources, I would say, of inspiration. First of all, it's based on mainly on the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu loosely translates into I am because you are, and reminds us of our shared humanity and the need for each one of us to play our role in creating sustainable communities, and that there's no way that I can exist and do what I'm doing if I am on my own. And to ensure that there are going to be people we all need to serve. And the next source of inspiration is it's personal. It's looking at my own family. So I'm blessed to have been mothered and fathered by pioneer Kenyans. So my father was one of the first Black people to get a career in medicine long before Kenya gained independence. And my mother was also a pioneer teacher. And they chose a path of service in a way that They dedicated their lives to their own communities because they felt really privileged to have gotten an education, when many of our people at that time, at that particular point in time, were dealing with a lot of struggles. And so I would see, when I was growing up, for example, we would be having a meal and someone would come home trying to deliver baby. And dad would be like, this is not even a hospital, and he would still help, right? Or someone bleeding. And the same thing for my mother. I saw how she would teach children how to read and write. And without saying a word to me, I learned from a very early age that I needed to serve my community as well with whatever skills I would acquire.
This is a great segue to my next question. You both are really driving us there. I want to introduce more the understanding of the value. Why is it important to engage the community? And how have you engaged community in the work that you've been doing towards social impact? And I'll start with you, Anjali.
Yeah, it's community engagement is so important when we're talking about social impact, because it provides an opportunity to engage different perspectives and different lenses when viewing an issue. So oftentimes when we're talking about how to solve, a problem or, a challenge, and what can we do to help that, we often forget about the people that are the closest to the issue, the closest to the problem that we're trying to resolve. So I think community engagement is so critical, because it's understanding that the community itself, those that are actually having this lived experience, voice must be heard. So it just broadens and increases the reach of what the paradigm needs to look like to help these situations and to come up with innovative solutions. There's no way to do it without community engagement. But community engagement is people throw that term around so often, but it's not an easy thing, because it's built on trust and relationships. So you can't have this top-down approach to engaging a community to try to help them with a certain situation or an issue or a challenge. You first need to understand what's the perspective of the various people in the community. What are the priorities? What is the common objective for this community? What are they trying to achieve? And then see if there's some mutuality of these objectives. And then you can work on a strategy to move it forward. But without that community voice, it certainly, it just won't happen. It won't be successful. So it's so important to have community engagement.
Grace, over to you.
Oh, yes. So community engagement is important, obviously, but from the way that I see it is that one cannot have any meaningful change if it doesn't come from within. So whether you're talking about innovation, innovation which is imposed on people can never be sustainable. Right. Innovation, you need to incorporate the ideas of the people that innovation is intended for. And the only way to do that is by engaging people. So, simply put, I would say that the real value lies in creating inclusive and sustainable communities.
Yeah, I want to hear more about challenges and perhaps even opportunities in doing this work. I mean, we are all human beings, and despite our best intentions, it's not easy having certain relationships, mobilizing community, engaging people who might be thinking differently or holding different values. So I would love to hear if you could share maybe an example of a challenge and perhaps an opportunity or whatever is it that you find important for us to hear in your experience engaging communities, and what happened and what did you learn from that? And Angelou, I'm gonna pass the mic to you.
Yeah. I would say, again, I would have to loop back around to trust. I think that we often, as you said, despite your best intentions, sometimes if that trust is not established and not built upon, because, relationships are like a currency, like you really, there's so much that can be gained from patiently and methodically and organically building relationships with communities, and that can be in various forms. But if that is kind of expedited to get to this end result that you want for this community, then oftentimes it breaks down. It's like one of those, a house built of cards. If there's nothing inside and it's just like this shell, it's going to collapse. So I think that, by building this relationship, building the trust, person by person, community by community, this is how you build a sustainable home and a sustainable relationship. So I would say that that's probably one of the things that, just in my work in, Green and Youth Foundation, which we had a focus, this is my initiative organization over the past 17 years or so, was connecting underrepresented young people of color to the outdoors and careers and conservation. And, it's such a homogeneous field, the environmental sector, and it's majority male and white. And the question is always, why aren't there more people of color in this field? And as we started to do, and it started with me because I'm like, I love this stuff, but why haven't I been encouraged to be this environmentalist, whatever? And a lot of it, according to my parents, were because we didn't feel safe sending our young daughter into this field or even encouraging her to have this career. So a lot of it comes down to who is in these spaces and, just believing that, it can be an area for you, that this is something that is a space that you can feel comfortable about. So I can see with myself, when we started talking about, say, for instance, Native Americans, getting them more involved in the environmental sector. And when they weren't responsive, and then really looking at, okay, well, what's their relationship with the US federal government? Perhaps that might have something to do with the trust, and why they're not just running to these opportunities. So we had to kind of backstep and build those relationships again. So that's just one of the examples. Of course, I had many, but I would say that trust is really critical, important, and is a challenge in making sure we can do this community engagement.
Yeah. And actually, before I move in with Grace, I would love to hear from you about perhaps one or two actions or mechanisms that actually help build that trust.
Yeah. In my former, what I used to do with Green Youth Foundation, yes, we would literally have listening sessions. We would engage, the community and bring food and, babysitters, just so that we can have the attention without distraction, because that's another thing. Like, what are the factors that are precluding or making it not possible for this particular demographic to engage in this field? Is it the pay? Is it, the fact that a lot of it is based on volunteerism and they need resources? There were many reasons. So when you would sit down and listen, and actually listen, not just, come and talk and have this agenda, but actually listen to the people that you're wanting to engage, that's often when you would get those little nuggets of insight.
Yeah, this is so powerful, because this is uncovering even another role, the listener.
Right.
The listener and the creator of conditions that make possible for people to engage. How powerful.
And And I have to at this point insert the importance of empathy, because when you're listening, you are understanding another person's perspectives, experiences, and so forth. And then you're putting yourself into that position and trying to understand, maybe this is why this set of circumstances doesn't work for this person. Maybe I should maybe I should work with them to propose another scenario that may work better. So I can't stress enough the importance of empathy in community engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And Grace, over to you. Any comments, thoughts, share your own example, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, one of our major challenges has been trust. I did discuss that with us here when we started doing the work that we are trying to do with Ashoka Diaspora Networks in Spain. How do we go to our communities and how do we make them trust this, and how do we tell them this is different from other initiatives they have had before where they have had trust issues. And so just building on to what Angelou was saying, one challenge that we've been struggling with is how do we build these, what we call here safe spaces, right? So how do we build those safe spaces where the diaspora community can feel safe enough and they can trust and they can engage in a meaningful way? And that is not also easy. That comes with a whole host of challenges as well in trying to build these spaces, because here in Spain, for example, what we deal with the diaspora community from a very diverse continent. There isn't one Africa, even though we continuously keep on thinking that we have one diaspora. So as we come together here, there's also a lot of diversity. And then we are dealing with first generation diaspora people, second generation diaspora people. And we are not on the continent, though we are trying to address matters that are related to the continent. So how is it? And I think you touched on one of the ways we have found also trying to create safe spaces, which is listening to understand, not listening to hear. So that is one of them. So we all come here, we in the most humble way, and we don't know, and we are going to listen to each other, to understand each other, and to benefit from diversity. So how can we turn that diversity into a value instead of diversity being a challenge?
Yes, absolutely, Grace.
And I love, Grace, how you actually get us into the next question. I love it because now I want to actually go more into diaspora work, and I would like to hear from you. What is actually diaspora work or diaspora network, and how is it that you are engaging with it, and why is it useful to engage with this? So over to you, Grace.
So a diaspora, the way that I understand it, a diaspora network is basically a bridge that connects diasporans with their home country, but also connects them among themselves, which is our case here in Spain, right? And so let me tell you a little bit about the work we are currently doing with Ashoka Diaspora Networks and with the EU DAIF. So we three organizations here, we have come together. So Africa 2.0 Spain, what we are doing is identifying African leaders here in Spain and bringing them together. Actually, this is going to be the first time that such a project is going to be carried out in Spain. So bringing these African leaders together to meet one of our key objectives also as Africa 2.0, which is, first of all, to start addressing the leadership gap that we have on the continent. Because if there's one thing that has failed Africa over and over again, is a lack of leadership, right? And the other one is to help us accelerate the development of the continent. And so teaming these leaders with Ashoka fellows on the continent is a brilliant way of accelerating the development of Africa. And where is value in this? So the value we see here is that the diaspora can serve as way beyond remittances, and as I mean the continent to start with, because of the skill sets that they have. So how is it that we can create this channel where they can also feel safe, where there's trust, and they can, and then we can speed up the development of Africa and get this leapfrog approach that we are looking for. But because the diaspora, they have this unique characteristic of being in two places at the same time, that will also impact positively the countries of residence. So this is a win-win situation. We are really looking forward to learning the three organizations that are involved. This is a pilot project that we are looking to learning a lot from, and which surely they are also going to help us raise the profile of Africa in Spain, and that benefits all of the migrants in Spain and the continent as a whole at the end of the day, because there's no empowerment without visibility. They have to be put out there, and people have to see, stop casting migration, for example, in Spain, only under Sophocles, because there's value in migration, and there's value in diaspora networks.
Mm. Oh, this is so good. I want to just use this moment to invite participants who are listening to us to share your questions. We can have access to them here.
We have one, Luzette, actually.
I'm gonna go there. Thank you very much, Swati. And so I invite you to just share. And the question we got here is rather connected with what we are talking about, and is, how can diaspora networks be more effectively supported for social impact and to build networks across different diaspora communities to build momentum through that lens of shared experience? And this comes from Martin. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, I could start with that because, Grace, I'm sure, so we think of this diaspora network of a collective harnessing of, resources, power, trust, relationships, all these different things, so that we can target it at challenges that from the country of origin, and in Africa 2.0's case, in the continent of Africa. But I think I see this whole remittance example as, because that's the highest return of revenue, to the continent by diasporas across the world. This remittance is the highest. To me, just shows this power that we have, and that's why I'm I love hearing about Africa 2.0, because I really see the power that we have. And it's just a matter of, putting these things in place and coming up with this model, which is exactly what you guys are doing. And how do we make this sustainable? Starting with this pilot like you guys are doing, and then making sure it's nuanced, and we're tweaking, and we're bringing the resources and everything that we need to this model so that it can be scaled and replicated. I think that sustainability has a lot to do with starting small in cases, and just making sure we have what the recipe for success, and then scaling that. But I completely, having a network where we are gathering, what are you guys, over 600 different African leaders, and forming this collective and to accelerate the development of Africa and its leaders, is just something that I think every African across the globe would want to get behind. So, I'm really excited to hear more about it, and to, that Ashoka is working with Africa 2.0 to grow this. And I think fellows in Africa is such a great place to start.
Absolutely. I echo that sentiment that we needed to start from somewhere. And starting small is not an issue. And we are open, to other networks that want to join us, that believe in these initiatives. There will be opportunities for them to join us. I mean, there's an African saying that goes like, if you want to go quickly or arrive to where you're going quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, then have company. Together. So yeah, so that's the kind of company that we are looking.
I love it.
Looking at.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in a different panel on well-being in networks. And we were talking, we had one of the participants was from South Africa, and she was explaining how sometimes we have the conversation around how it is that we need to help people know that they have a voice and that their voice matter. And she's like, well, we know that. What we need is to have the space, to have the structure, to have the opportunities to show it. So I wanna talk more about it. How is it that this diaspora work and that the work that we're working creating with Ashoka is kind of like creating infrastructure, architecture, opportunities, spaces for that power that already is there to be manifested. And I would love to hear from you, Angelou, first, and then we go into Grace.
Yeah, I mean, as with Ashoka, the understanding is that because this world is just rapidly changing, and our view of or the metrics for success, or when maybe when we were in school or our parents were in school, has changed tremendously. And because things are changing so rapidly, we need these quick solutions and innovations, and because there's a whole new set of skills that people need, and there are these change-making skills. So that's kind of the belief. This is part of this everyone a change maker movement, that we want every young person to master empathy. We want every person to understand that they need a new set of skills so that they could thrive. So our fellows are a perfect example of what a social entrepreneur could do to help identify these challenges and problems that are rapidly changing, and they're rapidly coming up with solutions. So I just think that, having them lead and providing these spaces. So we often bring together leaders in industry and changemaker companies and fellows and young changemakers, all of them together in a room so that they can talk about some of these challenges that Africa or whatever the situation, gender equality, go down the list of social injustices and challenges, and having them together talking about these challenges inevitably comes up with amazing, innovative solutions. So I can't see us going wrong with starting with that type of framework.
Yeah, excellent. Which reminds me of a phrase which in Africa 2.0 we borrowed from President Obama, which was, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So it called us to action that, there's no need to wait for other generation of leaders, that anyone could assume leadership in whatever space they had available to effect change, and the change that they sought. And that's the only way you can get the change that you want when you assume it. And I think, Lizette, you mentioned on something which I really liked, that what you are referring to this woman in South Africa who said, no, I don't need anyone to speak on my behalf, which reminded me of Domtila. She was called this woman from Bolivia, I believe she was, when from the mining community, and when she was taken to parliament, and many women wanted to speak on her, and she says, if you excuse me, I will represent myself.
I got it.
Right, because I can talk. So it's all we need is to provide these spaces. And I think that speaks to the work that Ashoka and Africa 2.0 Spain are trying to do. We just want to facilitate these channels, these bridges, so that engagement can take place, because there are leaders everywhere, there are change makers everywhere, really.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and I want to integrate some of the great questions that Swati is sharing with us here in the chat, and let's talk first with you, Angelou. How is it that engaging with the African Diaspora Networks can help further your work that you are doing in Ashoka Africa around empathy? And then we move into you, Grace, and then say, how is it that the work with Africa 2.0 and the work that Ashoka is doing can really foster the work of other diasporas. So let's start with you, Angelou, first. How this power of diaspora that we're talking about can further your work moving forward.
Sure. So the work that I'm doing in Africa, in Nigeria, that has this empathy focus is really, as I said before, reimagining, shifting the paradigm of what young people need to grow up better. So these skills, the resources, the things that they need. And because I spent so much of my life in the US, I have those connections that I see and one of the ways that I think, empathy can be brought about with young people is through nature. I think the environment sparks this curiosity, which leads to, being empathetic, and caring about something else other than yourself. So, I find that I'm able to connect with partners that, we've developed over the 17 years or so in the US, connecting them to some of these challenges that we're facing. One is natural resources and environmental degradation and climate and all these different things in the US. In Africa, all over the globe, but certainly in Africa, Nigeria in particular right now. So my worlds are really coming together in a beautiful way, in that there's so many people and companies in the US that are wanting to be more engaged on the continent and are wanting to know how they can, help be engaged, lend resources, what tools, what skills can they, share. So I think this time in history is just really, really important, that Africa is on this big stage and everybody's trying to figure out how do they get involved? How can they see her grow? So I think the timing is really good. And if you have these connections from Spain to the US to all over the world, which Africans are everywhere, it could be quite harmonious. And that's what we're starting to see.
Thank you for that. And Grace, I'm going to move to you and just repeat the question. How do you see your work with Africa 2.0 and Ashoka growing in the future? And what do you think other diaspora organizations can learn from that and be inspired from that work that you've been describing recently?
Right. So the work that I do here is mostly focused on leadership, bringing African leaders together and in bringing like-minded people together and ultimately to either help raise the profile of Africa in the diaspora or contribute to the ongoing development in Africa. So the way from where I sit here, Ashoka is key to us because Ashoka is global. Just take, for instance, if you look at the number or the population of Afro-descendants in Latin America, and Spain somehow sits in the middle between Latin America and Africa. And so the number is, you're looking anywhere north of 200 million people. Now, that's a huge number that no one should afford to ignore. So the work that we can do with Ashoka together and bring these communities for not just the benefit of Africa, because what happens in Africa this century is going to be important to the world as well, because of demographics, because of resources in Africa. And so the world should care more about, what is happening in Africa. And if Africa succeeds, the world will also succeed in the 21st century. And other organizations, our partnership, it's still nascent. It's in its early days. We hope to build this further. But the lesson, I think one lesson that can be learned so far is the spirit of working together, of identifying, Africa 2.0, we do have our identity, we have our area of focus, but we did identify a space which was common to us. So it's identifying these spaces and to avoid duplication of effort so that, we can get further to where we want to go, as I said before.
Yeah. Thank you. Very, very useful. And actually that connects with the following questions that I will be asking from our participants. I'm going to mix two of the questions that we have here. One is around, what advice do you have for a female identifying changemaker for engaging diaspora communities, especially for some who identifies as part of a diaspora community in first generation? So that's the first question. The second question is around, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered as a female person of color while change making, and how did this affect you and how did you overcome? I don't know if this is in past, to be honest. It might be more like in the present. In the present.
I know, like,
yes, it's still happening. But let's connect those two questions, like advice for a female identifying, as well as sharing some of the challenges that you've had as a person of color in this work. Angelou, over to you.
Yeah, well, to that first question, I really would say the importance of being yourself and authenticity. And oftentimes, and I get this from my husband, who spent a lot of his time, he was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, Enugu in particular, and then due to Biafra War, they fled to the US. And a lot of first generation immigrants, he says the focus is assimilating and trying to become like the majority, or basically become like anything else other than what you are. So, and then I often, and I'm now experiencing it, and I have to even say, before I get to that, my youngest son, who attended African Leadership Academy, said to me that there was a discussion about what are you, like, him needing to decide, because he has a Nigerian father and African-American mother, what are you? And he was like, well, wait a minute, why do I need to decide one or the other? That's like asking me which parent do I love the most? It's ridiculous, So I guess I say that to say, because now I'm seeing it here, now that I'm an African-American woman here in Nigeria, do I come as myself? Do I try to become a Nigerian woman, or do I just come as I am? So I think that it's really important to be authentic to yourself. And people are now wanting to learn more. And now that diversity is become like, a household word, people are more open to you bringing your culture, your food, your clothing, all the different things about who you are to the table, because I think it's starting to become more and more understanding that the diversity makes an entity better, it makes it greater, it makes it richer. So that's one thing that I would say to the person seeking advice as that first generation immigrant. And then the challenges as a person of color, a woman person of color in this social change space, I would say to allies are important, but make sure you have your community of people. One, your wellness is so critically important, because this work is tough. It's really intense. It's draining on who you are. You feel sometimes that you have to go in places and wear this mask all the time because you're representing different groups. And if you're your true self, how will that come off? So, those are a lot of challenges, but I would say that wellness is really important. So having an outlet so that you can talk to a circle of people that you can just be yourself with, so one that gives you, that perspective that also is good for you as a person. So to the challenges as a person of color, a woman in particular, you got to stay true to who you are and make sure you surround yourself with people that not only love you, but get you and get what you're trying to do and contribute to the movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. My story is a little bit different because I came to Spain as a young girl. I was always the only Black woman in many spaces. When I was in school and when I started working, so it would take me sometimes it would take me days before I saw someone who looked like me. And so when I started working on change making, I had to work with my people, but I also had to involve people from the diaspora, from the country where we are. I had to work with Spanish people. But so what has been important to me as I walk into these rooms where I am the only Black person and I'm only the Black person is believing in myself and believing in my story. And I couldn't agree with Angelou more that having a strong network does help a lot. And to me, what has worked with me is having a strong network, having a connection with the diaspora people, but also having a connection with the country of residence where I am, the people that I'm trying to influence and put my message across to, also having a very close-knit network from those community. ASEAN here is one of them.
That's great. So I'm conscious of the time, and there are a few other questions I wanna ask. And one of them actually connects with what you are speaking about, the network that you need to build, or the community of people that you need to build around. And so one of the questions here is around, how do you do that? How do you create your community of people? What advice would you recommend for aspiring change makers to create their own? So if you can give us some tips, that would be really helpful.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
go ahead, Grace.
Yeah, because I have it here. So in Africa 2.0, we started really small, right? But we grew really quickly. And what we started with, we were looking for like-minded individuals. And ethics, for example, was important to us because of what had happened to a lot of African leaders. And so if we wanted to be looked at differently and create trust among people, we had to operate differently. So we started looking for like-minded Africans within the continent and on the diaspora. So maybe that would be something to think about, that, you know, it's difficult to operate as a diaspora organization outside your country of origin. So especially when you're starting, I would highly recommend like-minded people.
I totally agree with that, Grace. And I think finding your tribe, and I talk about this often, is really important. And I think that a good way of doing that is stepping out of your comfort zone, you know, and what are the activities? What are the things that you like to do? You know, sometimes when you're in an environment and you seem like you're the only one that maybe looks a certain way, that could be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't things that you like to do that other people may have in common with you. So, you know, whether it is, like, for instance, I love music and dance. So, you know, going to different dance classes and, you know, food, you know, I love wine, you know, so finding the things that you enjoy, and then I'm certain that you will start to find your tribe, your people that you can kind of socialize with and network with, which often leads to other opportunities that, you know, is usually down the business road. So, you know, but you do have to get out of your comfort zone and be uncomfortable a little bit initially, so that you can, I mean, there's no way, as you were saying, Grace, when you go to a new country, you got to get out of, you know, in order to meet people, to learn what's happening in this environment. How can you just continue to eat the food that you're used to eating and listening to the same music? And, you know, there's just no way that you're going to grow. And I'm hoping that that's why you want to experience the diaspora, you know. So I think a big part of that is getting out of your comfort zone and engaging in activities that you like. And I'm sure that you will find people that may not look like you, but that have those same interests.
Thank you both. This is very, very rich advice. We have a few more questions, but at this time, we won't have time to answer them. However, I do want to ask you both to help all participants here and myself understand, if we want to engage with your work, what do we do? How do we support you? What can we do? Who do we write? So I'm going to start with you, Grace, and then I'm going to pass it over to you, Angela.
Great.
Right. So the best way to reach me now is, you know, I mean, many people now on social media. You can reach me via Twitter. You can DM me at Grace Obado. That's my Twitter handle, and my email address is also on the website, so you can easily reach me and engage, or you can reach out also to Ashoka Diaspora Networks, because we are working on this project together.
Awesome. And then if you want to reach some of the things that we're working on with Ashoka Africa, in our Everyone, we've just launched, as Lisette said, we've launched our Everyone a Changemaker movement in Nigeria, and we did a national launch, and we're about to go to different metro areas. So if you'd like to be a part of that in any kind of way, reach out to me at aezilo@ashoka.org. Or if you're interested in the environmental sector, and we're raising environmental awareness here in Africa, GYF Africa, Green Youth Foundation Africa is our website, but we also have it in the US as well. So depending on where you are, you know, listening from, we have something for both sides of the pond.
Thank you both. I just want then to take a moment to thank you both profusely for so generously sharing your stories, insights, narratives with us. It's been so inspiring and just very rich for all of us listening to you. And I want to just take a few seconds before we go, for all of us who are hearing here, to just take a moment and see, you know, what did I hear today in this conversation? And what is an insight I'm taking with me? And what is an action step I'm going to implement after this panel is over, so I can get engaged into contributing to make this world a little bit better. Again, thank you all for participating. I hope that you get engaged. And thank you, Angelou and Grace again. And thank you to the WISE team for hosting us today.
And thank you, Lucette. You were a great moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luzetia, for the moderation and
Absolutely.
everyone for joining us.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.